Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Barbara. Thank you very much. And it is so lovely to be back in Richmond. I used to live in Richmond. Richmond was home when I first moved from India, 16 years ago now. And any chance I get to come back to Richmond, I take it. And so this is my second year being here. Last year was the first year as an attendee, and Carol and team have been absolutely fantastic, and they invited me here this time as a speaker. So lovely to be here with all of you. I wanted to start off with all the full circle moments this experience is all about. I think that this story has been in the making for the last 25 plus years, because I started my career in HR back in India. And I moved here to the States straight from city of Pune in India 16 years ago as an accompanying spouse. And I had to leave behind everything, including my 10 plus year career, and pack up my entire life up until then into 2 suitcases, which is what was allowed on an economy class one-way ticket to the US, and landed here in Richmond International Airport. And so thinking about all that and being here today is one of those full circle moments in my personal life and in my professional life, because I started off in HR, and I've been in HR in training, and I've done everything in HR except for compensation and benefits. And so being here with all of you today is absolutely special, and thank you for letting me participate in that and including me in that. Yeah. This particular topic around harnessing the power of multi-generational teams, it's been a journey, and it first started about 4 years ago. It was a pandemic passion project, you can call it that, and it's something that has been sort of like a permanent feature of my own professional life. And when I was talking to Carol, Ben-Susan here, and the team, and by the way, I cannot go on without mentioning this, that Carol and I worked together more than 12 years ago, back here when I was in Richmond, and a fellow transplant like myself, and having created this opportunity among many others, it's really special for me. So when I look back at my career, my first job was right 5 days after I graduated college. I was 19 years old, and I was the youngest team member at this regional eye hospital back in Coimbatore in the southern city of Tamil Nadu in India. And fast forward 25 plus years, today I'm one of the older members in the team I'm on, doing learning experience design and professional development training and coaching for a large 6,000 plus federal agency. So this whole experience of working and leading multi-generational teams has been such a rich part of my life. And so it gives me absolute pleasure to talk about harnessing the power of multi-generational teams and sharing a framework that I've created around this with all of you here today. And in my experience, what I've learned is, and by the way, every single conversation today, I don't know if everybody conspired and set it up for me. Everybody has talked about generations. And David, who spoke right before I did a wonderful job. I actually should have stolen one of his slides. So we're going to delve a little bit more into that, and I'm looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. So one of the things I have noticed, which I'm sure a lot of you will agree as well, is that all of us come from different, even if we come from different generations, there are some things in common, and there are several things that are different and specific to each generation. But what I have learned and grown from this experience, and what I've also seen, is that every generation comes with its own sort of values, expectations, and work styles. And what gets in the way, at least what I have experienced and seen, is an overemphasis on stereotypes, unconscious and conscious biases that get in the way of how we view each other. and a propensity to over-index on age. And I have experienced ageism on either end, when I've been too young and once I became over 40. And so ageism is bidirectional. And that's something that I'm seeing more and more in our workplaces today. So today, I'm here to facilitate a process of unlearning, relearning, and getting our thoughts together on how we can harness the power of multi-generational teams. And I'm super thrilled to introduce everyone to a framework that I've created and developed called the FIST. And I'm sure you have some handouts on the table. And you're also going to receive a couple of additional handouts and workshop guides, et cetera, on the conference app after my session. So this FIST framework and everything that I'm talking about today is really, it's like a neatly packaged version of a sort of a spaghetti diagram, if you will, of my own experience. And another cool thing is the collective experience of the folks that you see on the slide here. That's a picture of another of my favorite former bosses and a very dear friend. That's David and his daughter, Rachel. So it was very interesting that all three of us were at this sort of a pivot point in our respective careers. And I had just started North Star Solutions and Services at about 6 to 8 months prior to that. And both David and his daughter, Rachel, were looking for their next role, next pivot in their careers. And the three of us together, we represent 3 different generations. And what was interesting for David and Rachel was that they started exchanging notes in their job search process. David is an executive leader with many, many decades of experience. He's a fintech and healthcare leader. And Rachel has a doctorate in physical therapy and considerably fewer decades of experience as compared to David. And I was somewhere in between. And when they started exchanging notes on their experience and they started looking at how the workplace views them and what was their experience going into the job search process, what happens once they were hired, what does their experience look like? And then David has also been a mentor for my business, and so we started talking. And what we conjured up was a 3-4-part video conversation series. And the link to that, it's a YouTube playlist. The link to that is available in my session notes on the app, so you can go and listen to those. They are 20 to 35-odd-minute conversations. And what I'm presenting to you today, it started 4 years ago. And we, I forgot I had this clicker. The most recent collaboration is with Subramaniam Kalpati, who I have not met in real life yet, in person yet. This is another individual from my vast universe of LinkedIn buddies, yeah? So Subramaniam is a global learning leader, and he's the author of the book, The Millennials. And he's a millennial, yeah? So prior to this, and in the process of putting together all my content for today's conversation, Subbu was one of the people I spoke to and who very generously shared his own research. He's also an ICF certified coach. He had conducted a webinar, and that's how we met. And we exchanged notes on the topic, and he very generously shared his own research and pointed me towards the Pew Research Center and their extensive body of research on this topic. So you're going to see some of that as I pull those in as well. The other thing is, as I was thinking about making this conversation as valuable as possible for you, and I was given to understand, and it's been also talked about today, several of you lead HR departments of one. So one of the takeaways, there are 3 key takeaways in today's conversation for you, and one of them was a survey. So instead of just coming to you and sharing my sort of experience, but mostly theoretical framework, I decided to create a survey, make it public. By the way, the survey is still open, and I know several of you have taken it already. If not, the link is available. I decided to crowdsource wisdom on the topic and incorporate that into the framework, into the FIST framework. So far, there are 67 people from around the world who've taken the survey in the last month and a half. And I've been able to pull in some of the initial findings from that. And those are all some of the things that I'll be sharing today with you. Yeah? And what we're going to be doing is really looking at global and national perspectives on this topic. And we're going to look at 3 facts around generational diversity. Those are facts that I have gleaned from all the work that I've done so far. And then I'm going to also share some of the insights from the survey that I've been able to gather, and then introduce you to the framework, and then we'll have time for reflections. And if you have questions along the way, we can take them, and then depending on what the timer tells me, we may have to hold it back towards the end as well. Yeah? So are we good? Are we good to get started? Yeah? All right. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. And somebody mentioned this earlier, yeah, one of the speakers. Every generation imagines itself to be more intelligent than the one that went before and wiser than the one that comes after. It's a George Orwell quote. I thought that perfectly sums it up. And I think it was David who was talking about every generation talks about we complain about our kids, and we complain about our parents, and our parents complain about us. It looks like every generation seems to be unhappy with the ones before and the ones after. So now that we're all working together, how do we sort this out, yeah? And that is the first fact. We live in an aging world. And whether we like it or not, that is a fact. And we have some proof to go along with it. If you look at age distribution, both in the US and at a global level, we are living longer and longer. Life expectancy has gone up. And we are choosing to, or sometimes needing to, work longer as well. We are choosing to not have children. And so our age distribution and labor participation rates are affected both globally and at the national level, yeah? So, and we have some proof in the media too. How many of you remember the movie In Town when it first came out? Yeah? And how many of you are fans of the show, Only Murders in the Building? Yeah? Yeah, so these are there is so much truth to a lot of the things that are shown in media, although media does also sometimes play the role, knowingly or unknowingly, of cementing some of the unconscious biases as well. So those are some things that we need to, we're going to be looking at how do you manage those things in an organizational setup. So this visual, by the way, this is sourced from visualcapitalist.com. That's a site you can go to for very, very reliable data and narratives, very strong narratives around any sort of data that you're looking for. So this graph shows us that since 1970, our worldwide median age has grown by almost a decade. So in the last 30 plus years, it's gone up from 21 and a half to almost 32. And it's projected to increase even further, yeah? So humans are living longer, working longer, et cetera, et cetera. And this is another study from the Pew Research. So that was the global. This is the US data. So this is from December 2023, Pew Research Center. And the number of Americans, so this shows many things, and one of the things it shows is the number of Americans aged 65 and older who are still employed has doubled in the last 35 years. Yeah? And given some of our policies around how and when you can access your 401k, how we've gone from benefit plans to contribution-based plans, benefit plans encourage you to retire at a certain age, contribution plans do the opposite. Rising healthcare costs, I don't want to make it sound like an election campaign speech, but those are all the realities we're facing, yeah? And a lot of us are in caregiving situations, either for children or for our older parents or relatives, or both. So all of this is only forcing us to stay employed. In the US, how our health insurance systems, access to health insurance is tied to your employment, is forcing people to stay employed, even if in a part-time job, yeah? So today, 62% of adults 65 and older are working full-time, compared with only 47% back in 1987. And this population, the 65 and older population, accounts for 7% of all wages and salaries paid by US employers. That's 3 times more than 1987. So a lot of the changes and the shifts that we are seeing in the age group makeup of our workforce is not all circumstantial. A lot of it is by choice as well. We are living longer, and we are also much, much healthier than we used to be. So we have our physical and mental capabilities and faculties very much with us that makes us want to remain contributing members to society. And we have different ambitions, and we have different expectations from our life, how we want to live our lives. So we make different sets of decisions than our parents and our grandparents and forefathers used to make. So this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So according to this, you can see they're looking at it decade on decade from 2003 onwards, and its projections to 2033, which is 2033 will be right here before you blink an eye. 9 years out, 2 to 3 presidential terms, whichever way of thinking makes it more palatable to you. So what do we see here? What do you notice here, by the way? Shout it out. What's catching your eye in this graph? Sorry? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's many reasons for that. And the one thing I was not able to discern, I should spend a little more time on there. This is all from the BLS website, so it's publicly available data. There is, as several of us know and see in our workplaces, gig work and part-time work and holding many jobs at the same time. These are becoming norms, so I don't know in this particular graph, there's one data point that I don't know is what is considered work, okay? So just because we are seeing a dip in the younger generation or the younger age group, to me, I don't have sufficient data to say that's what's happening, yeah? So this is what our current workforce looks like. And somebody said this earlier, yeah, the millennials and the Gen Zs, they rule the world, whether we like it or not, yeah? So, and the other thing is, and in my survey, my survey was anonymous, unless you gave me your email if you wanted a copy of the survey results. So there was one of the responses that said, which again was reflected in one of our speakers' talks, is millennials are 40 plus now. So this person said in the survey response that the word millennial itself is a problem. Yeah, so we seem to think about these age groups and these names that we use for these different generations in very static terms. And that's another challenge as well. So I'm going to run a couple more statistics and then get into the framework and things like that. So this is from a survey done by AARP in 2020 in collaboration with the World Economic Forum and OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So this survey received 5,500 plus responses from 36 countries. One of the first findings, or the most important findings, is that 83% of global executives recognize that a multi-generational workforce is critical to their success. Yet, only 6% or so have implemented actions that will get them there. So something like unbiased recruiting solutions. So for me, I have to say this, okay? So as a transplant from India, when I first came here, and when I was able to, after I was able to earn a work permit and start working here, which took about a couple of years, one of the interesting things I found is there's a lot of regulation that's supposed to protect you as a job seeker, as someone who's looking for a job. So nobody can ask you your age, yeah? Nobody can ask you about your marital status and things like that. But I very quickly, and learned the hard way, that they have ways to find that out. So to me, it was no different from what I was exposed to or what I had to endure in India. At least in India, I would be asked those questions up front, and then I knew what was going on, yeah? So the point is, there are legal protections, but they don't always protect the people they were intended to protect in the first place. So how are we as HR, as people and business leaders, incorporating these inclusive practices, actions, and behaviors in the work we do? So for example, there is data that shows, there are studies have been done, that if your job description has, let's say, more than 7 or 10 points, listed points, people from already underrepresented, marginalized communities and groups, they are less likely to apply. The more complicated the language in your job description, the less likely people that you want to apply will apply. And that applies to generational diversity as well. So choice of words such as using words like ability to multitask, which I think should be a no-no. We all know the human brain takes 23 minutes to switch from one task to another cognitive task. So why do you want people who multitask? Nothing will ever get done, yeah? That's besides the point. But using terms like digital literacy or need to be a digital native, technology, tech literacy, things like these, language like this is discriminatory. But I don't think there are any regulations against that yet, at least as far as I know. But these are things that you can keep in mind as you are looking to create inclusive hiring practices. So going back to this survey, they also found that nearly half of them, or a little more than half of them, do not include age in a DEI policy, in their diversity inclusion, equity inclusion policy. And 38% of them have mandatory retirement policies. Go figure. Yeah? So now that we have looked at some global and some national level statistics, I want to find out what the composition of this room is. You know what to do. Oh, sorry. How many of you did the QR code and how many of you did the code? That's my bias coming out. Okay. Apparently, Gen X rules the world. Okay, I think it's slowed down. So we have about 100 responses. That's cool. I personally self-identify as a geriatric millennial with several Gen Z tendencies, but I'm a Gen X. Okay. We're going to come back to that. That's my first fact. Generation, that term is a flawed, super flawed generalization, at best. Because I have worked with people, I continue to work with people who are in their late 70s who use digital technology way better than me. They teach me stuff. And I work with 20-somethings who know half the tech stuff that I know. And it's frustrating for me personally, yeah? So all of that is my bias being activated. But that's the thing. So if you look at, if you think that your birth year is the key to most common things that you have with other people with the same birth year, you could not be more mistaken than that. So, generation is a flawed generalization. That's my first fact. And some more proof in the data. So a generation is typically 10 to 15 years is collectively referred to as a generation. But if you actually broke it down, the distribution in 5-year groups, that's what your distribution really looks like. Yeah? This is what I found in my survey. So of the 67 people that that responded to the survey, this was the distribution. So Gen X was nearly 60%, followed by millennials, followed by the boomers. Apparently my survey wasn't interesting enough for Gen Z and Gen A. I couldn't get them to focus for 20 minutes. So that's what happened there. All right, since I already spewed out so many stereotypes, what is the one stereotype about your generation? Give me 1 second. Sorry. Did it work for you, no? Okay. 1 second, I'm just going to, yes. Yes. This is why I'm the geriatric millennial. I couldn't quite figure out the integration between Menti and PowerPoint. All right. Avocado toast. Oh. Millennials are lazy, that we whine, no loyalty, that we don't exist. Broken behind, oh my God, some really cool alliteration. What Gen X? All right. I guess I'm Gen Z, no attention span. Boomers need to leave. Okay, boomer. We got that. All right. You know what the best thing about this is? I did not say any one of those things. But I get to laugh. Okay. So, and these are some of the stereotypical things we get to hear. Being lazy, being technologically, and these were things that came out in the survey, in my survey as well. And attached to this question, I asked 2 questions in my survey. One is, which generation, of the generations that you worked with, which generation do you enjoy working with the most? And which generation do you find most challenging to work with? Enjoy working the most? Gen X are the darlings again. Apparently everybody loves to work with us. Even though this is only 52% of 67 people. But look at what happened here, most challenging. Who showed up? And the traditionalists. Yeah? And then I got a whole bunch of other responses as well, qualitative responses, and I'm going to read you a few, which are very similar to what all of you shared just now. Millennials need constant positive reinforcement. We will work until we burn out. We have very high standards for ourselves and the work we deliver. We are invisible. We have nothing to offer. We prioritize values over generating wealth. So you can, I'm sure you're already trying to figure out which generation said that, yeah? And then this is the quote, yeah? This person said, the stereotype is that we are young and inexperienced, and people forget that millennials are now in their 40s. Who's going to tell this to our politicians? That's a whole other story. So this person says the name of the generation itself is a problem. And then another person says, oh, the stereotype is that we all have massive pensions. And somebody said that here today. We all have massive pensions lined up, and that we all vote with no regard for impact on younger generation, and that we all have willfully caused catastrophic damage to the planet. So these are things that people think have stereotypes about their generations. And this brings me to my second fact. We have more in common than we like to admit. Because when one of my questions in the survey was to have respondents rate on a scale of 1 to 5 the importance of about 8 or 9 different factors at work. 5 being most important and 1 being least important. Guess what? Flexible working arrangements. Doesn't matter which generation you come from. Everybody wants that. Yeah? Organizational purpose. That was another thing which is usually associated with younger folks. Across the 3 generations that were the most number of surveys, everybody wants that. And I want to share a first-person account of a research study from McKinsey. The author says, one of the participants in the study says, early in my time at McKinsey, I was having a hard time with working Fridays late at night. I remember thinking I'd like to get done by 3 o'clock because that's when my kid gets home from school. 1 day a week of having dinner with my kid should be okay. I became fixated on regaining agency around that. And the same person goes on to add, by the way, Fridays then became ritualistic with my son. Before I share any more details, out of curiosity, do you want to guess the gender of this person? Ah, you surprised me. Yes, it's a guy. And I was like, wow, I'm so glad somebody called it out. This was shared by Bill Shaninger. He's a senior partner at McKinsey, and he's a co-author of this book called Power to the Middle. So the point that Bill makes is the slot may vary, meaning that what time is your protected time may vary based on your life stage, based on your age, but the fact that you want it does not change. Yeah? So he calls it a no-fly zone. What is your most costly time which you want to protect for yourself? That does not change. The fact that you want it does not change. So what it really comes down to is there is a through line across generations. Yeah? So I have distilled it to these 5 questions. What are your hopes and fears? What we aspire for, what are we most afraid of? There is always something, regardless of our age, regardless of our birth year. What has shaped our worldview? For some of us, it's 9/11. For some of us, it's COVID. For some of us, it's the Columbine shooting. For me, it's my lived experience as a transplant, where most of my conversations with people here begin with me teaching them how to pronounce my first name. Yeah? So for me, so this is how where we come from, regardless of our birth year, matters, and that's one of our through lines. The third question is, what do we value in life and work? Could be money, could be fame, could be time with family, could be taking care of kids. It could be, somebody said that very beautifully today, it's all associated with some sort of well-being, some sort of knowing things are fine. It could be opportunities to travel. It could be working for a purpose-driven organization. It could be any of those. The fourth question to me that's one of the key elements of this through line is, what are our rules of engagement? What are we willing to trade off? What are we not willing to negotiate on? So in my own career, I've gone from being raised in a family that's where work is worship, and I did that for the first few years of my career. You're supposed to put your head down, just do the work, and the work will speak for itself, and we all know it does not until you open your mouth and speak for it yourself. And then from there, I've gone to work is a place you go to, and then you distribute your time between that place, work, and home. I've gone from that to work is an activity, which I would like to choose when I do, especially as part of the knowledge work industry. So I've gone from, these are the transitions I've seen in my own lifetime. So we've gone from really work-life balance to work-life integration in a matter of 2.5 decades. Yeah? So what does success look like? That is also different for each of us, different for each individual. So as a leadership coach, one of the things I've noticed time and time again with my clients is that the definition of success is deeply, deeply personal. And it has nothing to do with your birth year or whatever generation. By the way, in India, these generation names don't even make any sense. Because we were forced to participate in world wars. That's a whole other story because we were colonized. But the term baby boomers, or the term traditionalists maybe, but the term baby boomers does not make sense. But does not mean we don't experience ageism. The point I'm making is this framework of nomenclature that we have for generations does not make sense in every part of the world. And so for us to base our policies, those of you that work in multinational organizations, that's something to think about, similar to your rest of the DEI policy, which is very, very North America-centric and does not work the same way in the rest of the world. So fact number 3, everyone is unique, and we need everyone. Why? Somebody mentioned that earlier today. Well, for starters, the road ahead for us is filled with wicked problems. You can look up this term. Wicked problems are problems that don't have a straightforward solution. That cannot be solved, they can only be managed. Example, US healthcare system is one. It is a wicked problem, yeah? So it was first coined by a design researcher named Horst Rittel. And wicked problems are complex challenges that don't have straightforward solutions. On one hand, they're inherently complex, and then because of that, they're considered bad. So our attitude towards that is very different. But they also represent opportunities for us to do things differently, which serves all of us much, much better, yeah? And to do this, we need perspectives across the board. And so some examples of wicked problems that we are dealing with are AI-augmented ways of working, climate refugees, that's a thing. People are literally having to abandon their homes because of climate change. So these are all these problems that look very global, but we are seeing effects of climate change in our neighborhoods, right? So these problems won't take long before they are at our doorstep. So we need everyone to solve for this. So this is where I want to bring in and introduce you to the FIST framework. To me, it's a very powerful metaphor. When I was thinking about it, I looked at my hand, and I thought, 5 generation, like the 5 fingers of my hand, each is unique. By itself, every finger has a purpose, but it cannot survive by itself. If you need to lift something, you need all the fingers, or at least majority of them. And that's when I formed a FIST, and that was the idea that it came to me. So FIST, to me, is the power of 5. A raised fist is the symbol of power. So thinking about how you can bring the 5 generations, and now it's actually 6 if you include Gen Alpha, who are right now probably doing internships, yeah, or in high school. So that's where the FIST framework came from, and I'm super excited to introduce that to all of you today. And it has 4 key action pillars, and I'm going to run you through that quickly and then talk you through some of the takeaways, yeah? So my purpose of creating FIST, which stands it's an acronym. It is to really provide leaders and organizations a very practical way to facilitate your journey from multi-generational to an intergenerational workforce. Like any other form of diversity, diversity is a given, it's a fact. We sometimes incorrectly chase diversity. What we have to really look at is we have all the diversity around us. How are we creating a space where this diversity can actually thrive? And that's what is inclusion. And the pathway to inclusion is equity, and belonging is the outcome. Yeah? So generational diversity to me is no different. Yeah? Multi-generational teams are a fact. You have them. We've had them for years. It's how do you create that intergenerational experience? That's a choice we have to make. Yeah? So FIST is my way of supporting you doing that. So what is the acronym? First one, there's a lovely quote that says, all problems exist in the absence of a good conversation. That's why we're starting with facilitating dialogue. Conversations, and I'm a coach. I believe in the power of conversations. Conversations create opportunity and space for you to suspend all kinds of judgment and just listen from the most natural state possible. They invite empathy and curiosity. So there's a lot of thought gone into the icons. So facilitate dialogue as a conversation. Next, I is for interrupt bias. That's the pause button. If you're familiar with Verna Myers, she was the first and probably only chief inclusion strategist at Netflix, now runs her own company called Verna Myers, the Verna Myers Company, TVMC. There's a powerful TED Talk that she's given, and one of the things she says is, first of all, if you have a brain, you have bias. So let's start there. Because bias is brain's neurological shortcuts in order to remember and process the millions and millions of pieces of information that's coming flying at it. If we didn't have bias, we wouldn't survive. But one of the things that Verna says is, biases are stories you make up about people even before you have met them. Biases are stories you make up about people even before you've met them. So Gen Z are lazy. Pause, interrupt the bias. What evidence do you have to support that? What evidence do you personally have to support that? The world may be saying that. Boomers don't get technology. What evidence do you personally have to say that? Yeah? So interrupt bias. The third key action pillar is sustain curiosity. So once you have willingly gone ahead and set up space for conversation, you have willingly, intentionally paused, interrupted your bias, you are able to then get into that space of curiosity. Carl Jung, a psychologist, American psychologist, this quote is attributed to him. I don't know if that's the case, but the quote is wonderful. Thinking is difficult. That's why people like to judge. Yeah? So how do you break that? When we interrupt our biases and we suspend judgment, we make space for curiosity. So going back to, I don't know why I'm picking on Gen Zs today. Probably because I have Gen Z tendencies. Gen Z are lazy. Okay, what might be preventing them from not taking whatever next step you're expecting them to take? That's one way to sustain your curiosity, yeah? The fourth and final one is transcending stereotypes, and that's why I've used a lighthouse, because you're walking towards your North Star, and you're transcending your stereotypes. So when we lead with curiosity, we are successful in expanding our common ground and understanding the value of our differences. And then you notice that it's a loop, because it's not a one and done, it's not an event, it's a process. So you keep going through the 4 steps, and once you've gotten to a point of transcending stereotypes, you go on to the next thing. Those of you from manufacturing might be familiar with the PDCA cycle, the Deming cycle, plan, do, check, act. It's very similar to that. You take one thing, you work on it, you take the next thing. It's a continuous improvement cycle. So to me, and I'm a lean agile practitioner, human-centered design practitioner, so to me, the FIST framework is really a lean agile practice that supports your journey from being a multi-generational workforce to actually transitioning into an intergenerational one. So you are in an iterative, incremental manner. So to me, it's not a vaccine. It's like taking your vitamins every day. So you got to do this. It's daily work, it's hard work, and you got to do it. So you will be able to download a PDF of this framework from the app. And then there's a couple of other things, and I'm going to do a quick time check. Okay, so I'm going to take 5 more minutes and then open up for questions, yeah? So this is a framework, great, all fine and dandy. How do we make it actionable? And that's why I built you a canvas. And I want to also share some tangible steps that you can think of taking. So I've got 5. There's 3s and 5s I learned from David, by the way. His whole thing was no less than 3, no more than 5. I have 5 fingers in my hand, I can count them off, yeah? You'll notice the trademark symbol around a few things. Those are all my creations. So I have a personal retrospective practice, and I call it Pause with Purpose. So to me, making pause a practice, so when we talk about interrupting bias, you need to build that as a ritual in all your ways of working. When you build your rhythms for business, you need to build in time for retrospectives. It comes from the agile world, but I use it with leaders, and a lot of my clients have found value in doing that. We always get into our space of too busy to improve. And a lot of things that good work needs time. And we seem to think we don't have the time. So making pause a practice. How do you build that into your rhythms of business? 3 A's of unpacking bias. This was something I co-created with a dear friend and fellow HR leader and consultant, Tiffany Castagno. We run a virtual World of Work conference. We've been going on 5 years. And this was, I think, year 2 or 3. We actually ran a workshop on interrupting bias. And we came up with this model for that workshop. And that is the 3 A's. Acknowledgement, awareness, and action. So if you have a brain, you have bias, that's acknowledgement. Become aware of what the bias is, and then you interrupt the bias and take action. So that's the template. This comes from my coaching practice, something my mentor coaches shared with me, notice, share, and ask. So to be present, and you have to notice. So for example, if you are in a conversation and you notice a shift in energy, shift in emotion, pause, share what you noticed, and ask a curious question. How is this? What has shifted for you? I noticed this. What is happening? Would you like to talk about it? So that's your notice, share, and ask. And an extension of that is asking powerful questions. So asking powerful questions, you can Google the term powerful questions, you'll even get a bunch of questions. The one caveat I wanted to call out is use open-ended questions when you're dealing with people scenarios, and save your why questions for process. You ask a person, why did you do this, is going to put them on the defensive. You're not going to get what you are looking for. So use your what open-ended questions for people and reserve your why for process. The last is expand common ground. Our brain is wired to look for threats, scan the environment for threats. That's why we look for differences. So how do you rewire your brain to look for what you share, what's in common, yeah? So finding common ground is hard work. But it has to be intentional. So you rule it in before you rule it out. With that, and 11 minutes to go, I want to introduce you to the canvas, which is really, what I've done is I've taken the FIST framework and designed a set of very thoughtful, open-ended set of 10 questions across the 4 action pillars. Knowing that several of you are departments of one, in your conference packet, you will be able to download a 12-page guide on how to use this, the framework, the canvas, to run your own workshops. So I've given you an example of how you can run a 2-hour workshop in your own setting using this. So I've given you a sample agenda and the questions, and it's like a worksheet. You can use the paper form, or you can convert it to a virtual collaborative tool form like Mural, Miro, whatever works for you, yeah? So that's like my personal favorite takeaway for you is that 12-page guide that you'll be able to download from the app. And this is a screenshot of that. Yeah, so that's the 2-hour workshop sample agenda. So my vision really with this is to support business and people and business leaders like yourselves and your teams and organizations to really look for the best in people and help them do more of what they already do well. I'm a strengths coach. That's something that comes naturally to me. And it doesn't matter how many trips around the sun they've made. Look for the best in people, help them do more of what they already do well, yeah? So as we begin to wrap up, I want to share a couple more things. I want to share some, do not do this. I call them potholes. Reverse mentoring. One more time I hear that term, I don't know how I'll react. Mentoring has got nothing to do with age. Mentoring is nothing but an agreement between two people that results in transfer of skills from one person to the other. It can go in any direction, doesn't matter. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. Ageist practices, we already talked a little bit about that. Check your recruiting practices, look for ageist language in your job descriptions, remove language that can indicate ageism one way or another. Because that kind of language, like digital native, tech savvy, proficient in AI tools, language like this incents people to self-reject, and you don't want anyone to do that because you are the one who's affected because your pool gets smaller and smaller, yeah? Tech takeover. Just because tech is there does not mean you've got to use it. AI doesn't have to be everywhere. We established that today in today's conference, yeah? So let's stop over-indexing on tech in our workplaces. You know, one of the 4 core principles of agile software development, the first one is interactions, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So tech doesn't have, just because there's tech is available, you don't have to use it. So these are my 3 sort of watch out, do not do these things. And now, in closing, I'd like to share with you the thriving example of a social impact enterprise who have not only steered clear of these 3 potholes, but they've actually tried to solve a wicked problem, and in the process, create an absolutely delightful intergenerational experience. Yeah. So give me 1 second.
College students generally have a lot of energy and they're interested in what they're doing.
He has many skills that older people need, really.
How you doing, Joe? Good to see you, buddy. Good to see you too.
I get to make connections with all of the different families that I visit, and it really helps me learn bedside manner and other things that I'll need for when I am in nursing.
And having Josh from the medical field with the knowledge of that makes you feel more comfortable.
It's just a great thing to not be locked into a X amount of hours per week contract. And I was figuring out the other day, a private service would be his entire income, I mean, for the month. And that's just not something that we could do. Continuity of care and development of a relationship and trust, and he looks forward to her. Oh, when's my Carrie Yaya? When's McKenna coming? He's anxious for her to come.
The companionship is as important as the chores.
When you get to know them that well, you're able to help them even more because you know what they like and don't like and if they're comfortable or not.
They know they can call me whenever they need anything, so it's a great relationship.
What do you think? So, Care Yaya. Yaya, among many things, is grandmother in Greek. And so it's a social impact enterprise founded by Dr. Neil K. Shah. And it provides home care for elderly folks and also medically vulnerable children. So basically they match pre-health students, not just medical students, but pre-health students with people that need care. So both parties benefit. There are many other experiments like this. So in Sweden, in government housing, they try to house older, retired folks with college-going kids. There are matching programs around the world where grandparents or people, I shouldn't say grandparents, because not every older person is a grandparent. Older people are matched with toddlers as a way to provide a very wholesome childcare. So there are many, many creative ways of bringing multiple generations together and really making it work for everyone. Yeah. So I would love to hear from you. What is the one thing you're taking away today? If you scan the code, then I can. And I'm almost ready. Oh, this is fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And you can keep the comments going because the Menti is still open. But with this, I really want to thank all of you for your time and attention and your engagement. Carol and the Richmond SHRM team for giving me this opportunity, for inviting me here. The ASL interpreters, the tech folks who helped me get set up, and everyone, the venue and everyone. And thank you so much for your time today. Yeah. I want to leave you with this. Mark Twain, one of my favorite English authors. Age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Yes. Thank you all so much. Have a good rest of your day.